Hacker News. They say it's linking to LazyVim.org. LazyVim.org is a pre-configured VIM. We see that it has 525 points, 451 comments. This is huge. Basically, I think that VIM, as I see it, is very good as a standard text editor. It's very good to know the motions. If you know VIM motions, you can use them in your standard IDE, be it IntelliJ or Visual Studio Code. Taking VIM and making it your daily driver for an IDE could be done, could be good if you could use it, but I'm not sure how much it's worth the effort. Because IDEs today are very strong, so you could just take the motions into them. So I estimate this discussion, this hotly debated topic, is going to revolve around whether we want it a text editor or whether we want it an IDE and how much you should invest in it. So LazyVim is like a VIM for the lazy people. They will pre-configure it with hotkeys, with plugins, trying to make it an IDE. From my experience, also when you try to make it an IDE, it won't be as good as a standard IDE. The best is IntelliJ. You might think that Visual Studio Code is the best. Depends for which target. I have seen places where each is better than the other. I like IntelliJ. LazyVim got me back into Vim after years of custom configs and heavily editing Luna VM and NVChad. I was getting a bit burned out, but decided to give LazyVim a try. Interesting. So this guy was trying NVChad. We know that NVChad is a pre-configured NeoVim. Also, Luna Vim is a pre-configured. And he says that LazyVim got him back into VM. This is interesting because this guy already used pre-configured VMs. And I was absolutely blown away. For the first time, VM setup actually felt like a real idea. Interesting. I might try this. It took about 60 seconds to go from having LazyVim installed to having fully functional IDE that I could use at work in real environments. Super interesting. I have a NeoVim, which is a little bit pre-configured. I think I have mainly two plugins like LSP and maybe another one, and that's it. That's good enough for me, but I'll give this a shot. That's the same amount of effort I would have taken to set up a fresh install of VS Code or whatever plugins I wanted. If you ever put off by the complexity and setup of NVChad or Lunar VM, then I highly suggest giving LazyVim or AstroVim. I think I tried AstroVim. So if this is the same, then I still need to mess with it. It's similar, but with more batteries included. I try. So here is the response. I don't buy it. I have so many custom little quirks that no amount of integrated out of the box. I agree with this. It's going to replace it in 60 seconds. That's unrealistic. Yeah. I also had the same feeling that it's better to configure your VIM by yourself on your VIM because it misses the whole point. Once you use a pre-configured VIM, then they make the choices for you. It's like it's missing the point of VIM. The point of VIM is that you fine-tune it for yourself. If I want to pre-configure something, I will use IntelliJ. This is what VM is strong at. When I want these specific configurations, I prefer VM. When I want the out-of-the-box, I use IntelliJ. I believe it's good, but it must be for certain class of working habits. For example, it's probably great for those people that use vanilla, anything including Vim. That's the thing. I absolutely don't want to do a bunch of tiny tweaks. I want to write React code. For me personally, I feel like tweaking an IDE gets in the way of that. Yet, is this the same guy? Yeah, interesting. Yet I can take a clean install of LazyVim, use Mason. Yeah, I used Mason to install React Language Server and installed called Pilot. Then I can immediately start working. So he uses it for React. That's interesting because And so that's what I actually do, and I found that to be much more pleasant and lightweight than other ideas like VS Code. If he compared it, VS Code is more an editor, I think, than IntelliJ. If he would have compared it to IntelliJ, I would take this more. But he compared it to VS Code, and for me, VS Code is an editor, not really an IDE. So I'm still not convinced. Can you actually explain how it's suboptimal UX and what I could be doing better? I want a simple ID, not suboptimal bloat. I don't need 200 keybytes to make a view component just because you have a bunch of custom quirks. Doesn't mean I do. So we answered him. Think about VIM and Emacs is that both of them out of the box suck, but what they both offer better than anything else is the ability to gradually modify. I totally agree with this. This is also what I feel about VM. Only when you modify it, then you get the power. When you don't modify it and you take something out of the box, just use an ID. Is the ability to gradually modify them to match what your brain needs. I 100% agree with your hyperbolic 200 key binding to make a view component, but that's not how it works unless that's what your brain wants. With all editors, you eventually encounter, oh, this is frustrating, or I wish I didn't have to do it, that. And then you have 30 plus years of plugins and configs you can draw. You'll want to tweak it. The fact is that your brain is different from anything else, and the less configuration and editor, the less it will be support to way your brain like to work. You can accept pre-made defaults like those provided by VS Code, or you can gradually refine your editor to be perfectly crafted tool for your particular and very individual. I choose the latter because I spend so much time staring at my editor and trying to convince it to do things almost always better with automated assistance from it. You can accept pre-made default. In my case, I prefer to do so. Yeah, I get it on IDs. I'm a different use case though. I'm a server admin, so server admin. I would also use Vim. I want to be as comfortable with bare bones defaults as possible so that I can jump on any server and just use VM. Or sometimes just use VI. I can't for the time it would take to set up a custom config. Yes, I agree. On every server in every environment, so the most I need is basic VMRC that has set number and a couple of net RW. Set number is, where you want the left part of the screen to show you the number of the lines. Copy with, and then you tweak it to show you always line number 1 on your current line. Copy with SCP and get going. Most of the time I don't even copy that over and run set number when I open the file. Yeah. Know that I'm still intermediate VM user. Splits and marks are most complex feature. I use no macros yet. In Vim, it's easy to record something and then to replay it. I know I can edit remote files, but so maybe once I'm comfortable with that. Okay, so the discussion continues. Of course, we are not going to read this. I encourage you to read this, maybe not whole thing, but get some. Let's take a random message and complete this. Okay, identify this after unfortunate birth of Java development and flying into the arms of IntelliJ. Me too, steadily won over by the indexing reliability exactly of the refactoring tool. The Vim plugin was good enough, and defining some codes for editor's shortcuts resulted in kind of fucked up fat VM Emacs. Yeah, that was quite productive. I too got fed up with spending inordinate amounts of debugging VM script and compatibilities. I agree. to end up with something that was slower and buggier than IDE. Exactly how I feel. If you want an IDE, use IntelliJ. Or VS Code if you prefer it. Still, as I said, VS Code for me is an editor. In certain crucial ways, or with highly debugging. Yep. In IntelliJ, I personally installed the VIM key navigation shortcuts, but I'm also far from in love with IntelliJ these days. It's slow, prone to index corruption with lots of analysis I can't easily fix myself. I may turn to VS Code, but I'm definitely in the gravity well of IntelliJ. However, perhaps this is worth a look. I have historically had a fairly high tolerance to plowing hours. I'm never getting back into fiddling with tools, just less than I used to. More Nexus GNOME category. What was that? Okay, so that was it. Yeah, same. IntelliJ is just too damn good for JVM work, especially for Kotlin. Not only that, my experience is that everyone else will be using IntelliJ, so the project usually depends. Yep. I somewhat like IntelliJ too, but it seems slow. Not for me. But what kind of professional spends hours upon hours learning his craft, but is unwilling to invest some time and hours into mastering professional tools? If someone would like to use it, then be it so. If someone would like to use it, then be it so. IDEs can also be called productive mode and use the right amount of resources necessary for large projects. They will get the job done. Yep. VM doesn't have to be tool used. Yep. Okay, great. So we finished with it. I encourage you to explore LazyVim. I encourage you to try and tweak bare bones VIM or NeoVIM. And for those of us like me who prefer IntelliJ or VS Code, we are also good. Don't feel bad about this.